Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
Why put people in it? Because it's here. You have to use it, or you admit it's pointless. Worth, the office worker.
We're talking about movies today.
Yes. And it's a bit weird for us. I want to talk about why we're doing this episode. Normally we do video games, but we've never been exclusive. We've done like TV shows and anime and stuff before. Have we done movies? Oh yeah, we did that Marvel movie before we decided to drop that because Marvel got super boring and it started off badly too.
Yep.
We didn't have nice things to say about it. Anyway, sorry about that. We were planning on doing it, but then we switched, whatever. Anyway, we're doing Cube today. And the reason we were doing it is because we recently started this other project called Cinemodded Fallout.
Yep.
It's a big YouTube Let's Play series, except we're role-playing it, and it's heavily edited, and it is extremely modded and also progressive and anti-authoritarian. So, well, anti-fascist, that too. So it's a thing that we've put a lot of hard work into, and yes, this is advertising it. Please check it out. It's on our YouTube channel.
But there's a mod that is a reference to these movies.
Right. Click our website in the description. You'll find a link to our YouTube channel. But yes, we're also one of the mods we're using, because it is a heavily modded version of Fallout. It's effectively the epitome of modded Fallout, including every mod we could possibly justify using, to the point that we've actually gotten a lot of flack for overdoing it, and we do not care. But one of the mods is called Cube Experimental. It is inspired by the Cube series of movies. It's an amazing mod. The story's a bit minimalistic, too minimalistic in my opinion, and we were kind of confused what the story was about. So when we found out it was inspired by, admittedly, a series of 20-year-old movies that have a kind of niche in the sci-fi, almost horror genre. I say almost horror because they call it horror, but it's more like a thriller, to be honest. We decided, well, why don't we go figure out what these movies are about, so that when we play the Cube Experimental mod, we'll have a reference point for it.
Yep, and that's why we decided to watch the movies.
Yeah, and so yeah, we watched the movies. They're about 20 years old, and they're really interesting.
Yeah,
and they're not that great.
No, not really.
But
I mean, the first one was the best one.
Like, we can talk about them, and that's why we wanted to do this episode, really, was because after watching them, we really had a lot to say about them, and this is our outlet, so you have to deal with it now, listeners. And if you want to watch them, go ahead, but I'd really only recommend the first one, maybe the third one. The second one you can really skip. But we'll go into plenty of their problems.
Yep.
But the idea behind them is really compelling.
Yep. I feel like they could have done much better with the idea.
Exactly. Most of the flaws are just execution, because the premise is a bit ingenious, I think.
Yeah, it really is.
And about the premise, effectively, the Cube movies are essentially We Live in a Society, the movie. If you're not familiar with what that saying means, it's effectively saying, oh man, so deep. It's effectively saying you're criticizing our society without actually going into any amount of depth of what that criticism is or means. What aspect of society are you criticizing? You're just saying the most bland thing you can possibly say. It's the American Democratic Party's take on criticism. We live in a society. That's what it is.
The first movie was still really enjoyable, though.
Well, here's the thing, though. When you make art, people can take meaning out of that art. You are making a statement, whether you're conscious of it or not. Even when you say, we live in a society, you're admitting a certain status quo neoliberal bias. Or possibly even just outside of it, or rejecting the status quo in a sort of anti-centrism kind of thing without really understanding what side of that spectrum you're on.
Yep.
So we're going to discuss all this and more, but first we have to give you the actual bare bones plot of what happens in these movies. And we're starting with the first Cube movie, which was made in 1997. Why don't you take us away, Kira?
All right. 5 people wake up in cube-shaped rooms with doors on each side of the cube. They go through a few random rooms before they all find each other.
Right, so you just start off in the cube. And when we mean all sides, we mean front, back, left, right, top, bottom. 6 faces, 6 doors.
Yep.
These 5 people introduce themselves by their last names, which are also printed on their clothing, which is uniformed.
Mm-hmm. Quentin is a police officer and recently divorced. Rennes is a convict who has escaped 7 prisons. Levin is a mathematics college student. Holloway is a doctor. And Worth simply says he's an office worker.
Now, there's a lot going on here, but basically, the Cube movies are extremely whitewashed.
Yeah.
It is so horrible how whitewashed they are. It is quintessential 90s America, how whitewashed they are.
Quentin is the only character of color.
Yes, they did have the one token minority, and it's like, fine. At least he's the main character. He's the POV character, point of view character. However, they made the minority character, the black man, they made him a cop. That way he's not too black for white America. You have to have the AOK badge.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. Anyway, and then Ren, by the way, like he's called the Ren because he's like a master escaped artist.
Mm-hmm.
So Ren shows everyone he has been using his boots to throw into the room and test as a trap, as he thinks the traps are set off by motion detectors. It's worked for him so far.
Mm-hmm. He is also the one that tells them there are traps in the first place.
Oh yeah, because he's already survived a bunch.
Yeah.
Yes, because when you go into another room, another cube, you never know if it's going to be trapped or not.
Mm-hmm.
And these traps are deadly. One of the first scenes in this movie is literally showing you a guy in the cube that we never know his name or anything, but he gets sliced apart into pieces.
Mm-hmm. Renan shows everyone
the Ren.
The Ren shows everyone he's been using his... Oh, wait, wrong. The Ren throws his boot and goes into the room, presuming it's safe, before being sprayed with acid and dying. This indicates to the others that the sensors are not only activated by motion.
Yes, that technique only works some of the time. This is something interesting the movie does. It does like this explore. It's like they just throw you into a cube as well as the viewer. You don't know how the cube works. Neither do they. And they're just kind of trying to figure it out. And they die as they fail.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this, however, I felt like this was a bit of a cheap shot. They set up the Ren as like this amazing character who's going to be the most tactically advantageous character just to kill him off immediately to really raise the stakes.
Yeah.
They also do it in a very brutal way too.
Yep.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, I know. All right, so...
Wait, I don't think we actually emphasized how brutal it was.
Yeah, he's sprayed with acid.
His face becomes concave.
Yeah, because it gets eaten by acid.
Yeah. So, like, real sci-fi stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
Levin finds numbers inscribed just inside each doorway to the next room and deduces that prime numbers indicate a trapped room, as the room the Ren went into had a prime number and none of the other doors did. So this is establishing that she's the smart one, right?
Yeah, she's...
which is also pretty cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
This movie is definitely not sexist, I would argue, even if it does have some race problems. And that's why they say the Ren died. The Ren was too arrogant in his specific skill set, and they need to work together to get out of this.
Mm-hmm. The group finds a mentally disabled man named Kazan, and Holloway insists they bring him along.
You know what? I really like this character.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am not mentally disabled, so I can't speak too specifically about the representation of mentally disabled people in this movie. I'm sure there's probably some stereotypes that are portrayed. It's not like the actor himself is mentally disabled. But there are some of the characters do act extremely ableist, and other characters call them out on it. not.
Yeah.
Like, the movie does not have an ableist slant to it. Like, the movie treats Kazan very sympathetically. I just think that's really notable. I was surprised that a movie from the 90s did that.
Yeah, because, like, yes, they did do a disabled character, but they didn't tolerate the ableism from all the other characters. And so even though they portrayed ableism and people were being ableist, the fact that they called that shit out is what's really important.
Yeah, like, specifically, I think it's Quentin, the police officer, who uses the R slur. And Levin goes like, no, don't call him that.
Yeah. Quentin suggests that they are all in the cube for a reason and is very suspicious of Worth.
Oh yeah, the movie does have an angle against Worth. They portray him in every suspicious light they possibly can. He's basically just the creepy white man office worker who is kind of given up on this whole thing. He's like, he's not pulling his own weight and stuff like that, right? Eventually, Levin declares a room is safe, and Quentin is the first one to go in when a trap activates. He injures his leg, but manages to get out. So, close call.
This causes Levin to question her calculations, and tensions rise to the point where...
Right, because now their system of using prime numbers turns out to be flawed in some way.
Tensions rise to the point where Quentin threatens Worth into admitting he designed the cube's outer shell.
Right, so no one knows how they got in here. All of them have memories of at one point doing something, and then all of a sudden they were in the cube. But Worth, what was his job before showing up here? Working on the outer shell. He says he was just a contractor, right?
He does.
So he just worked on a part of it. He doesn't know the whole conspiracy, but everyone is suspicious of him. Worth says that there is no one controlling everything when they all demand to know who the mastermind is. He says that the place is simply run through purposeless bureaucracy, and people were only put inside because it exists. That it's some long-forgotten, just part of society. And this is, I think, the thesis of what the Q movies were supposed to be. But we'll continue.
He, however, also tells Levin the dimensions of the outer cube, which allows her to deduce that the numbers are coordinates indicating where they are in the cube. She uses those dimensions to calculate how many rooms the cube is tall and wide, and using that figures out the coordinates and which coordinates are outside of the cube.
Right, so with that information, they're able to navigate further ahead until they get to the edge of it. And they get stuck in a room surrounded by traps in the direction that they're headed, but they find that one of the traps is sound activated.
All but Quentin make it through the room when Kazan makes a sound and almost gets Quentin killed.
Yeah, because Quentin has some like type of color phobia, and that room... It's implied that like the color phobia helps... Kazan has like this color phobia. It's implied that the color phobia actually has helped Kazan survive.
He likes blue rooms.
Right, and what was this room, green or something?
No, I think this room was blue.
Well, no, then he doesn't like blue rooms.
I don't remember.
He was scared of going into this color room. And the reason was because he knew it had a trap.
Yeah.
So he ends up losing his cool at one point. But it's fine. It's a close call, but they make it out. Quentin, however, is extremely upset. He's getting more angry with every cube they go through. And he's basically the self-appointed leader now.
Yeah.
The officer. He threatens Kazan, but Holloway defends him. And while she's defending Kazan, she notices that Quentin has been hitting on Levin. And she's kind of reciprocated. They've been kind of flirting back and forth. You know, he's the big officer. She's the smart one that's helping them get this far. And she's significantly younger than him. So she insinuates that he has a thing for young girls. And also that he might be even abusive to his family. Yeah. And like with the look that he gives her, she realizes she's right. Or she thinks she's right. Because he gets mad about that. Very mad. He has an anger issue.
And at this point, Levin also says something that indicates that she really doesn't agree with Quentin threatening Kazan and doesn't like him at all anymore.
Right.
Like, she's angry with him for threatening Kazan.
The group makes it to the edge room, one of the cubes on the edge of the bigger cube made of cubes, and decide to make a rope out of the outer layer of all of their clothes to check on the outside. For the record, it was so 90s. They all disrobed, let's get naked. Also, we all have boxers and undershirts on. Really? But at least they had uniforms, so I guess, dumb, weird uniforms, puritanical uniforms. But yeah, so they all do that. And they go to check the outside. Holloway's the one who decides to go out because she's light enough to be held by the makeshift rope. And Levin, who might be lighter because she's younger, is too important to risk.
Holloway hangs outside the room on the edge of the cube and finds there's nothing but concrete on the other side across from them.
Yeah, but then in between them and the concrete outer shell is just void, black as far as the eye can see. So, but right then, the cubes start shifting, which causes Holloway to nearly fall. However, Quentin pulls up the clothesline and catches her.
Quentin catches her. He gives her one look just to make sure she knows he is an abusive asshole and everything she thought about him was right, and then he drops her into the abyss.
He just couldn't stand that someone knew about who he really was.
And this is some brilliant acting in this scene, because she looks at first she's happy that he caught her.
Oh yeah, it's entirely unvoiced. It's just looks.
Yeah. At first she's happy that he caught her. And then he looks at her and she realizes the way he's looking at her and she tries to scramble to get back up, but he just drops her and she falls. And it was a really good scene.
This is when I realized, oh no, the writers of this movie know that the police officer is the bad guy. I thought, they made him the point of view character. They made him the self-appointed leader, and I thought this was just going to be some, propaganda stuff, right?
Yeah, through the cinematography so far, it really tries to show Quentin as the hero and Worth as the degenerate asshole or villain.
But it's a lie.
But it's a lie.
And this is why I think it's so problematic that they made the only person of color character the police officer. Because now it's the same problem, but in reverse. They're acknowledging the cop's the bad guy, but it was a black cop. So it's kind of racist in the way it does that, and I really don't appreciate that. Although I have to admit, I don't remember his name, but the actor, he did a good job in that role. I'll give him that.
Yep. They all get back inside the room, and Quentin tells the others that she fell.
So they all decide to rest for a while. Oh, by the way, when he says that she just fell, Levin turns away from him and you see the look on her face. You can clearly see she does not believe him. They just had that argument and then mysteriously she dies when the two of them were alone. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Quentin then does as abusers do and decides Levin is his next victim. He takes her away from the others and tries to convince her to abandon the others and have sex with him. She refuses.
Oh yeah, so he was kind of grooming her in a weird way, and he picks her because she's very talented with the numbers, the math, right? And when she's standoffish with him because she realizes he probably killed Holloway, right? And he doesn't like that, so he just forces the issue and tries to straight up rape her. Worth finds them and tries to fight Quentin, but is beaten and dropped into the room below. only for them to discover the Wren's corpse that they left in the room right near where they had first started at the beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. They're back to literally square one, or should I say, cube one.
Oh my god. They at first fear they were going in circles until Worth realizes that the rooms have been moving, and Levin realizes the traps are indicated by powers of prime numbers.
So these are supposed to be impossible to calculate in one's head because you're effectively trying to factor prime numbers. It's the same technology used behind encryption. It takes literally supercomputers to do this kind of calculation. But then Kazan proves that he is a savant by calculating them almost instantly. This was a little disappointing because it's basically the mentally disabled savant trope that it turns out they're actually really good in this one super specific thing. Mm-hmm. But given the sci-fi setting, it does seem like every character was put in the cube for a reason. Maybe this was the reason. Mm-hmm. But at least they're not being bigoted towards him, I guess. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so he's useful now, so Quentin actually gives a crap about him.
Yeah, with Kazan calculating the safe rooms, Levin guides them to the room they believe will move outside of the cube and let them out.
Worth ambushes and tries to kill Quentin, and then they continue to go with Levin and Kazan.
They reach the bridge room to find it is the room they all first met in. Kazan opens the door to find a bright white light and goes through.
Now, I don't think you were very clear about this in your notes, Kira, but the whole point is that the cubes were moving the whole time. Mm-hmm. And she was able to calculate that each cube moved to 3 different positions within the superstructure.
Yes, and she found the room that would move outside of the structure and therefore was a bridge outside.
Right, because the cube is 26 by 26 cubes.
And this one had a coordinate that indicated it was 27.
I.e. the bridge outside the cube.
Yes.
Right, so they managed to make their way there, and you see the bright light. However, Worth refuses to leave the cube, and while Levin tries to convince him to leave with her, Quentin reappears, fortunately having survived somehow, and also somehow moving to this cube. Convenient, literally random.
Yeah, because it's pure randomness that he didn't get killed by a trap along the way.
No, it's pure randomness that his cube happened to also move adjacent to where their cube is.
Yeah.
But stabs her in the back, and with the lever, he ripped off the door, killing her. He beats Worth again, then tries to go through the door to kill Kazan and leave, but Worth manages to hold him in the doorway long enough for the room to start moving again and rip him in half.
Worth then crawls towards Levin's body and lays there, dying next to her.
Kazan walks into the bright light. The end. Okay, so we need to discuss, but we gotta make it quick.
Yeah.
So, I didn't like them killing Levin, because I liked her as a character. Mm-hmm. But they did at least kill the cop, and I was really glad about that. And I really like how Worth turned out to be such a good guy. Like Worth's whole thing wasn't that he was like, he's just a lazy guy who doesn't want to contribute to the team, right? Instead, Worth was just depressed.
Yeah.
He was just depressed with the situation and like giving up on life. And that
was also the reason why he didn't want to leave the cube, because he was so depressed. There's nothing for me out there.
But it was through compassion that he ended up doing such good work and helping out his team so much. They gave him compassion. He gave his expertise, including killing the cop. Yay. But I still wish that it didn't mean like, you don't have to have only one person survive, but
I wish he would have saved Levin at least.
Yeah.
Like, I'm also happy that Kazan survived, and I did want Kazan to leave.
That was actually really surprising.
Yes. That he was the one who survived at the end.
Yeah, because this is what I was talking about. The movie doesn't have an ableist lens, or at least not overtly, because the mentally disabled person is the sole survivor. I really thought they were going to do the final girl trope with Levin. So much as I
really thought Levin was going to be the one to survive.
So as much as I didn't want her to die, I would have felt a bit cheated if she had been the only survivor.
Yeah, I would have liked it better if, like, Worth died killing Quentin, but Levin and Kazan both got out.
I don't know, but it was definitely interesting. And So we need to talk about what the cube represents. The cube is society. Now, what is that? It's not made clear. My guess might have been capitalism. The way Worth talks about it is that it's just this big system that's been left over in secret and hidden, and no one acknowledges it. And it's supported by the government, the corporate powers that be, but it's hidden. And that to me really reminds me of this system of capital that we have, that people don't acknowledge, but it constantly eats people. But it's a little vague, admittedly. But I really like the idea that it's a machine without a head. There is no master. We should probably continue, and then we'll revisit some analysis. We got to talk about the other movies. They aren't as good, so we're going to go through them a bit quicker.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have Cube 2, Hypercube, 2002.
7 people wake up in white-walled, futuristic-looking cube shape.
You forgot a part.
What?
Okay, so the man that designed the numbers of the cube wakes up in a white-walled, futuristic-looking cube.
All right.
He opens one of the doors to find there are no numbers. He says, "Where are my numbers?" And he gets killed by a trap.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or presumed dead.
Yeah. All right, so 7 other people wake up in white-walled, futuristic-looking, cube-shaped rooms and randomly go through rooms until they all find each other.
They find this man, Colonel Thomas McGuire, who tells them there's some sort of code for getting out. But, wait, what? Is this the guy?
I think so, yeah.
Well, the thing is, he's saying that there were the prime numbers, but that was the old cube. Yeah. This is a new cube.
Yep.
So he's of no use.
Yep. All right. A wall begins to close in on them, and they escape. Thomas intentionally staying behind, and then almost killing one of them by grabbing onto them as they try to leave the room.
They all try to get out of the wall closing in by traveling through lots of rooms until they can't hear it anymore. Because it's traveling from room to room, and it's like a spatial distortion kind of thing. The cube is collapsing.
Mrs. Paley, who seems to have dementia or Alzheimer's, is slowly revealed to be a retired theoretical mathematician, and theorizes they might be in a tesseract or a hypercube, which Jerry explains to the group.
Jerry also admits he engineered the touch panels used on the doorways between the rooms.
Once they aren't in mortal danger, they all introduce who they are to each other in an attempt to find a connection. However, they are all hiding something. We are shown flashes of their true lives, and eventually it is revealed that they are all connected to Izon, a defense contractor.
Kate says she is a psychotherapist who worked at a hospital. Simon says he is a consultant. Sasha, who is blind, says she is a student. Jerry says he is an engineer. Max says he works on video games. Mrs. Paley says she is retired, and Julia says she is a lawyer. This is all half true. Because again, they're all connected to Izon.
The group makes the connection that Mrs. Paley worked for Izon when she recognized the dead body as a Nobel Prize nominee who formerly worked for Izon.
And basically, Mrs. Paley is the first one who gets the Izon name dropped.
Yes.
So she's the first one they find out explicitly worked for Izon.
Yep.
Eventually, they realize that time does not work as they think it does in the cube. When they open a door to find another Mrs. Paley being killed by another Simon before he is decapitated. Simon does not take this very well. They argue whether it was a parallel universe where time went differently or simply an illusion. It was a parallel timeline. or a branching timeline, rather.
Yeah. Later, they decide to rest, and Simon tells Jerry he's actually a private investigator who was hired to investigate an Izon employee who went missing. Then Sasha hears a noise and wakes them all up.
A floating square appears in the middle of the room, and they try to discern what it is as it gets more complex and moves more erratically. And by more complex, we mean like it gets extra dimensions.
It expands into a lethal spinning frame, and they all try to flee the room.
It's a hyper object. It's like a figure in like 40 dimensions, basically.
However, Jerry ends up getting shredded by the object.
Oh yeah, Jerry dies for no good reason. Kate remains to save Sasha, and they escape when the object turns back into a simple floating sphere, floating square, and then disappears as they stay still. It's motion activated.
Simon suspects Miss Paley's a spy, so he ties her up and gags her. Crystal beams start protruding from the walls, and Simon tries to free Miss Paley, but ends up killing her when she won't let go as the beams get closer, and Simon narrowly avoids them.
So you realize that Simon is paranoid about Mrs. Paley because he saw another version of himself where he was paranoid about her. It's an ontological paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out she's really not suspicious. I mean, yes, she worked for Izon, but so did all of them.
Yeah.
The only reason he's suspicious of her is because she has dementia. So this movie is not nearly as kind when it comes to ableism, sad to say. At least they didn't make her out to be evil or something, but she does get killed.
Yeah. Max and Julia leave Simon behind after he killed Miss Paley.
Max reveals he was working on programming a concept of time manipulation for a video game, and is getting sued by Izon for it. Julia reveals that she is a lawyer for Izon.
They confess feelings for each other out of nowhere and begin to have sex, only for it to be revealed later they were in a time dilation room with zero gravity, so they aged very quickly and died.
They literally only existed for this scene, and they didn't even have the guts to actually show them get naked. If you're going to kill off these characters to do it, at least it's a mature movie. Come on.
Yeah.
But no, their characters were completely superfluous to this movie, and it was actually very insulting. Sorry, next. Simon, alone now, has a mental... I guess psychotic breakdown, yeah, is the best way to put it. And then kills and eats a parallel timeline Jerry. He then finds the Izon employee he had been hired to look for, also in the cube, and kills and eats her too. I liked the last movie for having the officer that was the bad guy, but they seem to understand that. This time we have a private investigator, and he goes literally less than 24 hours with food and decides to turn to alternate universe cannibalism. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
He literally just goes like...
And they weren't even willing to commit to the cannibalism.
Oh, they didn't. Yeah, again, they didn't show it.
They didn't.
This is not a horror series. I'm telling you.
I really didn't expect them to show any cannibalism gore, but they didn't.
No bloodstains.
They didn't even hint about him actually eating them. The only thing they did is have him say how hungry he was, and we were supposed to extrapolate that he was cannibalizing them.
Well, I mean, it's obvious that's what they wanted, but yeah, they didn't show any blood or corpse or anything. You just keep seeing him collecting Jerry watches, and I think Rachel was the name of the person that he was trying to find.
No, it was Becky.
Becky, sorry. Kate and Sasha travel through rooms, encountering alternate timeline versions of them that died.
Sasha tells Kate that space and time are distorting because the Tesseract is imploding and reality will collapse. She also reveals that she is Alex Trusk, a computer hacker who figured out how to make a Tesseract for Izon. When Sasha found out they were putting people inside, she tried to stop them and decided to hide in the only place they wouldn't follow her, inside the Tesseract.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Kate still wants, because it's like an execution chamber. You're just like, I'm going to go to the one place you'll never suspect. The gallows.
Yeah.
The guillotine.
Yeah.
You'll never find me there.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we won't really need you if you stay there long enough.
Yeah.
Kate still wants to try to get out and tries to make sense of a number she kept seeing in every room, 60659.
Simon finds Kate and tries to kill her, but Kate stabs him in the eye only to turn around and see a much older Simon with the missing eye holding Sasha hostage. Sasha says that they are all dead anyway, and Simon snaps her neck.
So that, again, not yet another pointless character. Kate stabs Simon in the leg and punches him, killing him. Yay.
She then looks at the multitude of Jerry's watches on Simon's arm and...
by the way, this is why we know it's cannibalism. The other version of Simon was older, like he had been living in there for years, i.e. living off of cannibalism.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
She then looks at the multitude of Jerry's watches on Simon's arm and realizes the 60659 must be the time the Tesseract will implode. She grabs Sasha's necklace and jumps into a black void below the room she's in at exactly the correct time.
Kate wakes up in a metallic pool of liquid and is helped by some agents.
She gives them the necklace, and it is revealed that she was working for them to get this necklace the entire time.
She's then shot in the head, and one of the agents reports Phase 2 is terminated before they leave the building.
Yep.
So that's the movie. Significantly worse. Garbage movie, I would say. Because
you were only left to assume that those agents at the end were eyes-on employees.
In the first movie, there was actually, strategy. It was clear the cube had a win condition. Mm-hmm. It was a test of some kind, even if a brutal one. Mm-hmm. This movie, it's literally luck. It's infinite universes. Mm-hmm. The idea that she just jumped out at the right time is ludicrous. Does that mean that the only way to get out of this prison is basically, you have to wait 6 minutes and try not to get killed for 6 minutes? It's not clear.
It would have been much better if they would have made it clear that, this is a hypercube, so time is the way to get out instead of space.
But even then, they didn't explain how that worked.
Yeah, no, they didn't explain anything about it, which is why it sucked.
And it's also very important to mention that this changes the meaning of the cube from the first movie. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because this movie came out in 2002, right after 9/11.
Yeah.
It's very clear the movie was actually being worked on during 9/11, and they retconned it and changed it from referring to government to instead refer to corporations. Because after 9/11, it became considered heresy to speak ill of the United States government. With all the patriotic and nationalist and jingoist fervor that was happening.
Yep.
And I know this is true because even though they do all that crap about talking about Izon, the defense contractor, there's literally a deleted scene at the end of the movie that reveals those agents at the end that kill Kate are government agents.
Yep.
So the cube was supposed to be a state thing, and they made it a corporate thing instead because they didn't want to insult the state. Mm-hmm. So the end result is it kind of becomes a muddy both. This is what I was talking about. We live in a society. Mm-hmm. That's what the cube is. It's society. And whether it's state or corporation depends on which movie you're talking about or what time the movie is, or just really both. We live in a state-backed capitalist society, so that's what the cube is. The cube is just whatever society happens to be, the status quo, and that's a state-backed capitalist society. I'm sorry, but they were too cowardly to just come out and say it.
Yeah.
And then they came out with the prequel, Cube Zero, where they wanted to explain how the cube worked and everything, which I don't think was a bad idea, although I question some of the things they added to the lore.
Yeah.
So let's figure that out.
Two technicians, Eric Wynn and Dodd, are shown to be monitoring occupants of the cube from a remote observation room.
They play chess, and Wynn demonstrates some mental calculator abilities that allow him to predict Dodd's moves.
They receive an order to record the dream of the subject in the cube, Cassandra Rains.
In her dream, she is captured while working in the forest with her daughter.
Rains wakes up and meets some other occupants of the cube, Robert Haskell, Jellicoe, Meyerhold, and Bartok.
So we're finally seeing an outside perspective of, people looking in on the cube. Mm-hmm. Cassandra recognizes the tattoo on Haskell's forehead, marking him as one of the agents she remembers capturing her in her dream. So now we have cybernetic soldiers. Mm-hmm. He is a cybernetic soldier that has been, modified, but he was thrown in the cube as well. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Wynn and Dodd talk about how apparently everyone in the cube is a convict who chose the cube over a death sentence. However, Wynn recognizes Cassandra as a political activist and finds that she doesn't have a consent form indicating she agreed to this.
It is weird that they allow, Wynn and Dodd literally can't remember a time not monitoring the cube. They have dorms on site.
Yeah.
They can't remember the outside, but apparently they still get newspapers. It's a bit of a plot hole.
Yeah.
Okay. Just enough information from the outside world. Okay. Mm-hmm. Bartok ends up getting sliced to pieces by a razor wire trap that the boots fail to detect. which was also a reference to the first death in the first movie.
The rest of the group tries to figure out the letters on the doorways to see if they can find an indication of traps and write them down as they progress.
Jellicoe goes ahead into a room and is stuck with a syringe which contains a contagious flesh-eating bacteria.
The others find her and Meyerhold gets scratched by her, contracting the bacteria.
Haskell decides they should leave Meyerhold behind, but he begs them to not leave him, and Haskell agrees on the condition that Meyerhold test the rooms first. So this is actually a really good compromise, I think. The idea is like, okay, I have a disease that's going to kill me. I got hit by a trap, but it's a slow-acting one, right?
Yeah.
So the least I can do, I'm gonna die, but at least let me be useful to you by testing out a whole bunch of other rooms so that you all can live longer.
Uh-huh.
Of course, they're not as cordial about it, but that's eventually the compromise they get to.
Meyerhold checks the room below them and sees some blood and uniforms like the clothes they are wearing. Haskell pushes him into the room where he is melted by sound waves from speakers.
And Haskell does the completely idiotic thing of just like, hey, we have a person here who's literally willing to use their body to test rooms for us. Let's just kill them to be cruel about it.
Yep.
Again, the one person of color character is the soldier.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a person of color in the Hypercube. Oh, wait, no.
Sasha was
the
Asian.
hacker. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was better. That is the one thing Hypercube gets a plus on, the other movies don't.
Mm-hmm.
Wynn and Dodd are called by their mysterious supervisors to perform an exit procedure for a former colleague of theirs. And literally there's like a phone, and like the phone never rings, so this is kind of a big deal, right? Owen, who was put in the cube, one of their former co-workers, but he's the last survivor of his group in the cube, and he's making it to the end. He makes it past the big white light like Kazan did, right?
Uh-huh.
And then wakes up to find himself in chains in a black room. The exit procedure begins, and Dodd asks him a series of questions. One, is your name Owen?
He asks him what his name is.
What is your name? And he goes, Owen. Question number 2, do you believe in God? And Owen says, no. Wynn presses the no button, which incinerates Owen.
Mm-hmm.
Wynn asks Dodd, what happens if you press yes? Dodd says, no one's ever said yes.
Yep.
Put a pin in that.
Mm-hmm. Horrified by this being the result of trying to exit the cube and believing that Cassandra wasn't supposed to be in there, he decides to go into the cube himself. Wynn does.
Wynn finds Haskell and Cassandra, telling them that Haskell was right to kill Meyerhold because of the bacteria.
Yep.
You didn't have to kill him that way, though.
Yeah, exactly. Dodd is then unexpectedly joined by his apparent supervisors who indicate they are from the government. They keep saying random stuff that...
They're not specific about being from the government. They're like from the powers that be.
Yes, well, no. They specifically say stuff like your taxpayer dollars at work and stuff like that to indicate that they are from the government.
And they could be like defense contractors.
I guess.
It's plausibly deniable. And they are very wealthy. Like one of them has like a monocle and a cane and everything.
Yeah.
And like, so these are like big deal people, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you talk about this later, but literally at one point, you see these people they're big deals, right?
Yeah.
Especially that guy with the monocle.
Yeah.
Do you have what his name is?
His name is Jax.
Jax. Great.
Yeah.
At one point, he gets a call from his supervisor, and he immediately loses like all of his like prestige and whatnot because he's like, "Oh, please, it's just the cube. It's what happens. I'm in charge. Do you want to upset me?" And he gets a call. He's like, "Yes, master. Yes. Okay, right on it, sir."
Yeah.
So there's a definite hierarchy here, and we don't know how high it goes.
Nope. The supervisors, Jax, and 2 analysts attempt to trap the 3 cube occupants in a room, then electrocute them. But Dodd sabotages some controls and then rips out the power to the cube to trigger a reset.
And the reason that they're intervening is because you're supposed to get a mind wipe before you go in the cube. You're not supposed to remember that you were a cube monitor because that gives you an unfair advantage.
Yep.
But yeah, now the cube has been triggered to reset, right? Jax finds Dodd doing this. Dodd swallows the chip that would allow them to fix the system, and so Jax kills him to get it out. Dodd was very much the kind of boomer, like, I'm just following orders kind of guy. But when push came to shove, he actually did give his life to help. So he is a tragic character in this story.
Wynn explains the reset to Haskell and Cassandra, saying that they have 10 minutes to get to the exit before the system vaporizes everyone inside.
Jax activates a chip in Haskell's head that they implanted when he was an agent for them and controls him to try to get him to kill Wynn and Cassandra. Because, engineered soldier and whatnot, he still has the technology in his head.
Haskell is effectively dead at this point. Wynn and Cassandra manage to fend him off until he finds them at the exit.
Wynn and Cassandra then manage to jump out of the exit just as the reset triggers and vaporizes Haskell. And this is, by the way, is not like an official exit, because the official exit just leads to the God question. So this is like an auxiliary.
Yep. They land in water and swim to a shore where they start running away.
Wynn gets captured, but buys enough time for Cassandra to get away.
Wynn wakes up on a surgical table and is told that he was sentenced for high treason and agreed to be in the cube a long time ago.
No, he was specifically sentenced, or his sentence was extended by 2 lifetimes for what he just did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He dreams of Cassandra finding her daughter and telling her about how he saved her.
Wynn wakes up in the queue. They mentioned that not only are they going to extend his lifetimes, but they're going to do some alterations to his mind so that he won't do this again. So when he wakes up, he is now mentally disabled. And he exhibits behaviors that Kazan exhibited in the first movie, indicating that Wynn becomes Kazan in the future. All right, so that's the movie's analysis time. Do you want me to just, rant for a bit?
Go ahead.
Why don't you say something first before I go off?
The whole thing about Wynn becoming Kazan doesn't make sense, and I don't like it very much.
First of all, it's a different actor.
Yeah, but I do like this movie for the fact that it's a stronger story, I feel, than Hypercube.
Yes, but I was a little upset with where that story went.
Yes, and I agree with that. It was still at least somewhat of a plot and story, unlike Hypercube.
Well, right, but I still think the first one's the best one.
Yeah,
so
of course.
My big problem with this is the first movie was more metaphorical. The cube was obviously a metaphor for society. I would argue capitalism specifically. The second movie couldn't really make up its mind whether it wanted to be government or corporate. And then the third movie really leans into the government angle, while still leaving some plausible deniability to the corporate angle. And I can't help but read the movie as talking about, the right-wing concept of a deep state.
Yeah.
And that when they were saying it's headless, what they really meant, it was a secret cabal. And we all know that's code for Illuminati, which we all know is code for Jewish people.
Yeah.
Right? So I really don't like that read of it. And I don't want to go with that. But I can't deny that some people might read it that way. Whichever
if anyone ever decides
whichever
to
version of the anti-Semitic trope you want to be. You want to be obviously anti-Semitic and call it Jews. You want to be discreetly anti-Semitic and call it deep state. You do you, bigot. Sorry, not you, audience. I know you're better than that. But I don't like that take. You know what I mean? Sorry, did I interrupt you?
I was just saying, yeah, I don't like that reading either, but I don't think anyone would read it like that because I think very few people have analyzed it half as much as you have.
Well, okay. I definitely think they're leaning more into a government angle. Now, Izon, they talked about it being a defense contractor. So I think really, like I was saying earlier, the cube is society, and yes, it's government, but it's specifically state-backed capital. And I think the cube as a metaphor, when you see this Cube Zero movie that explains its purpose, they talk about literally detaining a political activist without cause, consent forms, death sentences. It makes it so much clearer to me. The reason it's not clear whether it's government or private, or mostly government, but still some private, is because the cube is a metaphor for the American justice system and the prison system. The cube is where we throw the prisoners we don't want to talk about. And yes, basically every single person that goes in the cube worked on the cube, contributed a part of it, because we all are part of society and contribute to society, whether we want to or not, in a state-backed capitalist society. Therefore, when we all meet our maker, we will have helped create them.
There is something that supports your reading of that.
What?
Every character in the first movie, all of them were named after prisons.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they were all named after prisons.
Oh my goodness, so they actually intended that with the first movie. Wow. I did not know that.
Yep.
A little too subtle, honestly.
Well, that's why they had such weird last names. Levin, Holloway, Quentin, all those were...
So it's
names
always
of
been about prison. But the second movie is so weird. The second movie...
I don't know about the second movie.
Yeah.
I don't know where they went from there, but I can tell you that in the first movie, you know. I can also tell you where the inspiration came from for the concept of this.
What?
A Twilight Zone episode where 5 people were stuck inside a cylinder, and it turns out that they were toys, but also living toys, and it was fucking Twilight Zone. So
Okay.
yeah.
But when you analyze it from the perspective of a prison system, it makes so much sense. Because, yeah, there is technically a way out of the cube. Technically. Good luck ever getting it. In fact, it's specifically designed to prevent anyone from ever getting it. So much so that literally not a single character in any of the Cube movies survives. We talked about Kazan surviving, but now we know he just went to a room where he was supposed to answer, "Do you believe God exists?"
At least if it still works like it does in Cube Zero. We
Well,
don't know for sure that the exit works like that.
I mean, it almost certainly does.
Let me dream, okay?
All right, but you're being naive. Now, it's possible that Kazan, being the mentally disabled savant, will be the first person to answer that God is real and maybe survive accordingly. I guess Cassandra survives. No, Cassandra makes it out. The political activist.
It tries to tell you that, but that is actually just a dream from when. We don't know whether that's real or not.
No, she definitely made it out. Because when he's talking to Jax about what happened to her, the look on his face is very clear that he would have been smug about capturing her if he had captured her, and he was not smug.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the political activist who was like anti-bankruptcy or something, they never said what her stance was, but still, like, the Cube movies are very anti-authoritarian movies. I was genuinely surprised.
Yeah.
Even if their message is a bit muddled, and even if they don't know race, seriously, you're gonna make a movie about the prison population and almost every single character is white? What is wrong with you? Goodness. Oh my goodness. But the message the movies send, especially during the 90s and early 2000s, it's honestly a bit brave.
Yeah.
I really feel the second movie was all muddled up by 9/11, but this movie, Cube Zero in 2004, was definitely made after it. And I want to talk about why the cubes. Why do they do this? I mean, yeah, they're just throwing people away. It's a metaphor for the prison population, but what are they trying to accomplish? Why not just do prisons? Why did they make the cubes? Right? And it's clear each movie takes place in a different cube. There's 3 different cubes. One of them is a weird liquid hypercube pool. Then the other cubes are just however advanced they were at the time they were made, right? But why? And it's that God question that we have to come back to, right? My theory is that the way I read it, especially if we take it from the perspective of this is like a state-endorsed justice system kind of thing that's propped up by private prisons and a private prison industry. By the way, 13th Amendment still allows slavery. Read the 13th Amendment. It says it allows slavery in prisons. We still have slavery, people. Sorry. It's not surprising that there's a Christian religious bent to it, considering the history of America.
Yep.
And I think the cube experiments were specifically designed to test, is it possible for a belief in God to be self-manufactured? Is theism innate? That might sound weird, but they wipe the people's memories when they go in there, right? Mm-hmm. And they then force them to go through these horrible, brutal traps and whatnot. And the few that make it to the other end, they interview, ask them their name just to make sure that they are them, right? Because their name is one of the few things they'll even know about themselves. Mm-hmm. And then they ask, do you believe in God? And no one ever says yes. So the experiment would seem to be a failure. That people only believe in God because people are told God exists. If you isolate people from the knowledge of religion and then put them through brutality, they're never going to be inspired in a belief of God. They'll actually be kind of inspired in the opposite. Mm-hmm. But they do this over and over and over again, hoping that one day someone will just spark and be that God. Maybe that's supposed to be Kazan. Doubt it. Mm-hmm. And I think this goes back to what Wirth said in the first movie. It's pointless. It's a dumb experiment. Mm-hmm. It's a dumb experiment made by a patriarchal white supremacist state that is ultra-nationalistic and evangelical. Mm-hmm. It's just a way to throw away people they don't like, which is why the political activist is in there. Because she criticized the government.
Yeah.
And you know what? I don't think there has to be a big mastermind. The president, whoever's the president in this world, right?
Could literally not know that this is going on.
No, I'm almost certain they do know. They just don't care. Oh. It's like when a real president gets into office, the justice system is just the way it's been. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not overtly evil, like look at Obama, right? Mm-hmm. For all of his flaws, he came in on like a change of like progressive hope and everything. And then what'd he do? Basically nothing. Almost nothing, right? Mm-hmm. Very mixed bag at best. Mm-hmm. Did he get rid of the prison system or at least make it somewhat better? Barely, if any. Might have made it worse, actually. It was very corporate. Mm-hmm. But that's my point. My point is you don't have to have a single evil mastermind that's behind this whole thing. Yeah, there's a hierarchy, but the hierarchy itself isn't important just to know who's at the top of the pyramid, but rather the system that the hierarchy represents.
Yeah.
It's almost too bad that they went with a cube because maybe a pyramid might have been better. But the idea that it's a cube, by the way, I also find ingenious because a cube, what does a cube represent to you, Kira? When you hear cube, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? The concept. First thing, smack. What's
box.
Really? Box?
I don't know.
For me, it's artificiality. Because cubes are inherently unnatural. There is nothing in nature that is a cube.
Yep.
They are something humans designed. Mm-hmm. They are manifestations of our own being. And they don't have to exist if we don't want them to. Mm-hmm. That's my take on it. What do you think?
I mean, I agree with that, honestly. I didn't know that you didn't know that the first characters were named after prisons. So, yeah, it was really good to see your reaction to that. But, yeah, I definitely...
Good info. Thank you. I appreciate the contribution.
Yep.
I'm sorry I talked so long and we're running out of time.
It's okay. All right.
Final thoughts?
I mean... I recommend you watch the first one, but that's it.
Abolish prisons. Replace them with rehabilitation programs. Prison is not rehabilitation.
Yep.
Black Lives Matter. Abolish the police, too.